Hello to everyone. I'm Sarre, Miika Sarmakari, ex-Music Finland guy, now a label guy, always a rapper guy, songwriter guy. And I think we will introduce Adrian and Jessica very shortly, but just to give the context, they've been here at a songwriting camp. How many of you guys have been in that same camp with these guys? 2? Most haven't. So I wanted to ask you guys to introduce yourself.
Sure.
In short, and then just give a few words about the songwriting camp and your experience. And after that, we will go to the video.
Okay.
Adrian can go first.
Well, hello everybody. I'm Adrian. I am a songwriter from Warner Chapel in Taiwan, and I'm also a recording artist from Universal Hong Kong. So geographically, I'm confused. I've been writing songs ever since I was 19, so a good 15, 20 years, I think. I've only just become a recording artist 3 years ago. I've been doing a lot of songwriting on the side while having a day job, and so a few years ago I decided to make that jump into becoming a full-time musician. So in short, that's my story. Yeah. Jessica? Yeah.
Okay, so hi everybody. I'm Jessica from Warner Chapel, Taiwan. And I also oversee the songwriters in Taiwan and in Malaysia and Singapore. And I also do a lot of original work in China, of course, and Korea as well. And so this is my second time coming to Finland to join the A-pop Song Castle, which is very inspiring. So we'll take a look at the video and then I'll talk about it a little bit later.
Yeah. And I forgot to mention, this is my first time at a songwriting camp in Finland, and also just being around a big group of people writing together. So it's been a very, very interesting and special trip for me. Yeah.
It's my first time as well, gathering with a bunch of creative minds. People, only a few of them I know, and most of them I don't, but I believe there will be some kind of chemistry between us coming to this. Yeah, I guess our inspiration will just go big bang.
It was a great opportunity to learn from a lot of different people from different places, from Hong Kong, from China, from Singapore, Malaysia, Korea, Taiwan. It was amazing learning from different people, and I thoroughly enjoyed the process, even though maybe there are some little disagreements here and there, but I'm also learning from that.
I'm really happy to come to Malaysia and write with everyone. There are a lot of talented writers here, and we're all inspiring each other, and it's so beautiful. Yeah.
Coming here is this like beautiful beach resort, so it's always like an adventure to see who you're working with and how you're going to experiment together, and it's always, I don't know, it's really exciting and I love doing it.
Most of the writers, they're very exciting that they get to know writers from different cultural backgrounds. I think the most exciting thing is that they learn a lot from it, and we also gain a lot from it as well, that there are so many new songs coming out today. We're going to enjoy more than 25 or 30 songs tonight, and hopefully we're all having a very happy party tonight.
So Okay, so that's the video from our regional songwriting camp last September, and it was actually this event was inspired by the A-pop castle. Last February, it was my first time in Finland. Thanks for Music Finland. They invited us to join the songwriting camp in Ruka, which is very, very pretty. And afterwards, I was like, I want this to happen as well in Asia. So I hosted that camp. So it's based on the experience I got in Finland. So I'm very thankful to Music Finland, Katarina. Yes, you guys are awesome. And so I want to talk about this, like in Asia, like at least for like a Chinese songwriters, it's not very common to work with other people. Most people, they work by themselves, alone, in a way. So in the beginning, I was like, I trying to bring this concept to them. So it actually took me some time to make this happen. I think Adrian can talk about songwriting.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of just the circumstance. You know, I think because Asia is such a diverse region with so many different markets, and I think it's definitely, you know, the circumstance a bit to begin with. But I think also there's a cultural aspect to it as well. I think that there's a somewhat of a I think the term is maybe sometimes we're overly polite. And so sometimes there's a little bit of emotional barrier to collaborate and to be able to talk very frankly and honestly about, you know, one's songs and, you know, criticize positively, things like that. So I think it's a combination of those two things. Yeah.
And I think, but after the songwriting camp, everybody was like, wow. They were like, yeah, actually, you know, I'm good at top lining, then I'll focus on doing that. Then if I'm good at tracking, then I'll do the tracking thing. And if I work with other people, we can bring out the best of each other to make a great song. Because if you're a top liner, you don't know how to do the tracking, it probably would take him or like 3 months to write a song, you know, trying to do the production thing. But if he got the tracker to work with him, it probably would take like 5 hours. Yes, so that's a huge difference. So afterwards, like a lot of the writers who joined the camp or who didn't join the camp, they are so eager to find out like if we can do this more. So we're actually organizing like also the songwriting camps. Like we did one in Beijing in March, and we did another one in Penang in Malaysia in April. And we also do some like mini sessions, just, you know, get some people together to write songs just for 1 day or 2. Some writers like fly from Hong Kong, from Singapore to Taiwan, you know. We just organize like sessions for them for the like entire week or something. Yeah. So it's like a new perspective for a lot of people.
I wanted to get in detail to some of the differences you spotted between working in your camp over there and over here. But first, I would like to ask for a few examples about the Asian market. As you said, like it's such a wide concept of different countries and different markets within. So maybe just in brief, what kind of different markets are we talking about when we're talking about the Asian market?
Where to begin? I mean, I was just talking to a lot of the songwriters this week, and what I've spotted in terms of Asia is just such a diverse music market, and there's a general preference for all different types. I mean, if you really explored more deeply into not just the K-pop scene or the Japan pop scene, when you look at places like China, Taiwan, Singapore, Malaysia, and down to Indonesia and so forth, they're all completely different, preferences. So, for instance, K-pop would be a bit more on the EDM side, more on the R&B American style sort of a type of music. Japan has its own complete different flavor, as do China. I think in Hong Kong, where I'm from, there's a tendency to focus a little bit more on the traditional sort of pop ballad type of music. But and then you look at places like Indonesia, where in my mind, it's the wild, wild west. They are so hungry for every type of music, especially because it's a population of 400 million. Thailand is interesting, like more soft sort of rock. Maybe the Finns might be able to do this, as you guys are fantastic in that genre particularly. And yeah, I mean, it's just all different bits and pieces. But I think mostly, what I've certainly come to realization this week, after spending so much time with all these fantastic, talented musicians, is that I think this whole concept of electronic music is really redefining every single genre. You know, my background is I used to play a lot of classical music when I was a kid, and then I discovered jazz and blues, and I loved it. And I started off, you know, in a blues band, and I was playing that and so forth. So my background was very much more on the traditional band setting. And as you can probably guess where I'm going, I've never been the biggest fan of electronic dance music because of my preconceptions of what they might be. You know, that sort of, you know, I wasn't a big fan of techno. But I think especially during the last year, I've started to realize that, you know, electronic music is redefining all that stuff. So it's how you use electronic music and arrangements and program and patches and things like that to redefine reggae, pop, you know, jazz, rock, all that sort of thing. So I think that's where that direction is going, and I don't really have to tell you guys this, but you know, I think that's where that future direction is, you know. Yeah.
I think that's a very good summary of some of the differences between the different countries, music-wise. I think that's very, very interesting. And do you then kind of keep track of all these markets in your work?
Yeah, well,
And
I mean,
what happens trend-wise in different markets?
Yeah, as Adrian mentioned earlier, like in Hong Kong, like love song, the ballad is like the biggest thing over there. It's kind of similar in overall, I think in Greater China market, like Taiwan, China, like love songs, you know, that touch your heart. It's always important because I think it comes to like people, most like Chinese or Asian people, we are not very good at expressing our feelings. So it's better to sing it out. That's why karaoke was so big everywhere in Asia. And it's mostly the lyrics is talking about like relationships. He dumped me, you know, blah, blah, blah. She's getting married with somebody else. And it's always on the top charts, it's always this kind of songs, which is very different from like a Billboard top 10. It's mostly like a dance, you know, kind of stuff. So the Greater China market is like this. And then Adrian mentioned like EDM dance is getting bigger. Yes, they are popular, but still like those love songs, they're still in demand. Yeah, but when the artists now in Asia, of course you don't want to have love songs for the entire album. Then they want something like, you know, dance. They can like, you know, inspire people, or like a happy dance song. You cannot be sad a whole day, right? So that's how the dance music is getting bigger as well. And with all the like internet, all the digital players, it's very easy access to all kind of different music now. Yeah. So I think it's really good like timing for all the music to get into China now, and it's the local people will make like a big fusion. You know, they use the Western, you know, element and trying to make something for their own territory in a way, something a little bit different. Yeah.
So now I'm happy that we understand that we don't know anything about the market. And
nor do we.
Yeah.
And I think this is like, I'm just trying to be funny here because like that's one of the points of this session, to kind of open up some info about different parts of the different markets within Asia, so people can just get interested in one of those. Someone can get the soft rock idea that now this would work here, and someone can get the EDM idea. But as far as working now, you've set up a camp there, you've set up a camp here, and we talked with Adrian before about some pretty interesting similarities you spotted between some Nordic composing and composing in Asia.
Yeah, one of the most astounding things that I've discovered is that it started off as I would listen to a lot of the conversations that you guys would have in Finnish, and I spotted a sort of in a tonal way. There's some similarity to Cantonese, which is a dialect of Chinese, where I'm from in Hong Kong. There was a little sort of similarity to it, and it started off there. And I remember just walking around and going into shops, and then I would hear background music, and all of a sudden I would hear this big chorus. and I would just immediately, I would just think, wait, is that a Mandarin song? Is that a Chinese song? You know, it's astounding that I think, especially with music, I haven't been to Sweden and other parts of Scandinavia, so I don't know if that's true or not. But you know, definitely here in Finland, you know, there's definitely an uncanny similarity, you know, in terms of the melody, the music direction, so forth. You know, that's just something like I never expected, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also want to mention like Tuesday night, I went to see the local Finnish band, the Happo Radio, with the Warner Music Taiwan A&R and the one artist from Taiwan. And we was standing there, was like, this is totally could be in Chinese. Yes. It was like, we were really, really very surprised because like we're so far away and it was just like, this is really interesting. We can totally like put ourselves just singing in Chinese. It was like, yay.
This is the westernmost part of Asia because we take the shoes off. So in Sweden, Asia starts here.
And then actually, my colleague, she talked to the band manager, said they actually have a lot of fans in Japan. So I was like, yeah, but they are singing in Finnish. You can still like connect to people outside of the country, which is really good. Yeah.
But Adrian, you mentioned you were even able to spot like very detailed in how some of these songs were similar in Cantonese. There was like the scale being used was the same.
Yeah, I mean, I think with a lot of music in Asia, I mean, and I actually think that, you know, in Western music too, like anything that's sort of more melodic, I think pentatonic scales is just something that always hits, you know. And again, you know, it's things like, you know, sixth intervals, third, you know, all those sorts of things. I think that's where I see that similarity between the music that I've heard here and with a lot of the stuff that I've heard in Asia, you know. Yeah. So
yeah, it's interesting. Then regarding the workflow at the camps, you've kind of done the similar program now in both places. Did you spot some differences aside from the working alone part when people actually were grouping and getting into the song production? Was there something that would stick out for you?
I think when I hosted the camp last year, I was like, because most of the writers, they will speak Chinese, yeah, even though they are from different countries in Asia, but most common language is Chinese. So I was like, it probably will be easier. But then I was like, the first day, like everybody's like, they don't know how to talk to each other. It's just like I mentioned earlier, it's probably the Asian thing, you know, we're kind of shy. We don't want to really speak out in a way. So the first day we have to go into the room. It's like, you guys should just speak out. We're trying to mingle with them a little bit more. And then the second day, everybody was like, okay, now we know what we're doing because you have to finish the song on the day, because next day you'll be working with somebody else. You cannot really like delay other people in a way. So second day was getting better, and the third day everybody's like, okay, let's do this. And the fourth day when we were finishing the camp, people were like, can we have more? I was like, yeah. It's like, yeah. So it's like I think Adrian also feel like the hyper after the camp. You want to keep doing it like in a way, but here. Like the camp here, like people are from like Japan, from Korea, from Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, and of course Finland. And everybody has to use your second language. But strangely, I think the flow is actually better here. Yeah, maybe because like most people here, you like speak out their minds more easily in a way. Yeah, so it makes things going faster. When I was in Malaysia during our camp, I was so worried because some teams seems they cannot finish their song in time. But here it's like a lot of teams like in the afternoon it's like yeah, let's go out for a smoke. We're pretty much done, something like that. So it's like okay, that's the interesting part for me. Yeah.
And as far as like, because you're also a recording artist and the top liner, as far as the concept of the pop song. Can you spot some differences between what people are trying to go for here and what people are trying to go for in your home grounds?
Where I'm from in Hong Kong, I mean, as I said, the market is very, very still dominated by the big traditional ballads. So, I think there is some room because I think, especially, from the Hong Kong market's perspective, I think the majority of people will continue to have those big ballads, but I think there is a hunger for different types of things. I mean, I wrote many years ago. I wrote a song that was based off the riff of the chord progression of John Coltrane's "Round Midnight," and that was actually my first song, and I never ever thought that could be sold as a song to a big star, and he loved it, and it went on to have really great success. So there is still some room, but I think it's really just being able to collaborate with the lyricist, coming up with the right story, because that song was basically roughly translated to "We're Both Lonely." So that plus those chord progressions from "Round Midnight," it sort of just worked. And I think that's why there's definitely a lot of resonance with that song. The other thing I wanted to talk about too, and I'm not sure, Jessica, if this applies to Taiwan or not, but Hong Kong people are obsessed with the story of the song. The importance of lyrics is absolutely paramount. I'm actually working on a couple of singles for this year later on to be released, and I tell you, the first thing that we think about is, okay, nice melody, what's your story? And so I think for songwriters here, and I think A-Pop Castle does a fantastic, Music Finland does a fantastic job in that regard, is, I think get out there, get over there, and talk to people and just interact with a lot more people, and just kind of understand what they're going through in terms of their stories. So, even when you go back home and write your music, and it may be in Finnish or English or whatever, if you're able to present a good story, they're going to love it so much that they're going to spend a lot of effort and resources to ensure that the right lyricist writes the right thing for this particular song. So I think that whole concept of the complete package, melody, arrangement, lyrics, it's very, very important. But then, so goes everywhere really, I mean.
Yeah, I think for like Taiwan or China, Chinese lyrics basically is very important. Like Adrian mentioned, it should be like a story. Yeah, and because for lyrics, it's like a poem in a way. And sometimes like a good lyrics would change the concept of the album. We sometimes got like requests for like lyrics, and when the A&R or the artists themselves, they see the lyrics like, okay, actually my album can go this way, or they will change the whole concept because of this lyric. That could happen in Asia. Yeah. So I don't know about like a Finnish market here, how the music is like, is the lyrics very important, or is it has to be a story-wise? Because like, if you guys ever see like, especially the Chinese music videos, most of the music videos are about a story. There will be a story in the music video. It's not just like people like lip sync in the video. It's mostly about a story. Yeah, so people can connect. Even it's more than the song itself. It's also the image that what it can bring you. Yeah. That.
And I think and just to expand on that point, I think the whole record, the record label's role in creating that artist, and they are a lot more proactive in sort of creating that position for a particular artist, especially I've found with Mireille from Japan. I mean, Japan, it's very much like that. There's a lot more, I wouldn't say control, but there's a lot more proactiveness in terms of determining what an artist should do. So as a songwriter, it's almost like you have to think from a record label's perspective, and that's where the story comes in. Because if you're able to write a good song that has a good story, they might actually, the marketing, the publicity guys will say, oh yeah, there's something good there. And then they could there's a long tail of marketing things that they could do. So that, I think, one should actually still, think about that as well when you write that song. Yeah.
Have you spotted differences between humor in song context?
Humor?
Yeah, if you look at Finnish, like we all use Spotify as our streaming services. It's not all, but most of us do. And then we measure ourselves with Spotify's top 50 and top 20. And if you look at Spotify's top 50 or top 20 in Finland, coming from the urban music side, a lot of the big hits, or some of them, use a lot of humor, and that will go through in Finland very well. As far as like, here's a brick and I will hit myself in the head with a brick, and then I will hit myself in the head with a brick again, and it's called hitting myself in the head with a brick. And this is not an actual song, but I just made it up.
I think it would make a great
I
rap
think
lyric.
so. Yeah.
It's a great rap lyric.
We might go back to the camp after this, but just just like I think it's an interesting point, and it's something that sticks out in Finland in at least that sector of pop music, and it's not the same in every market.
Yeah, I think this works in Asia too. I think maybe some of you have heard the song, the PPAP song. In Japan, it was like viral last year. And a few years ago, there's a Chinese song, the Little Apple thing.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's also like, it's very catchy. It's very like, people can learn like instantly. Or for example, the Gangnam Style. Yeah, it's like people can dance to it right away. It's the upbeat. So it's kind of funny for us. It's like I mentioned earlier, like the slow like love song is big in our market, but for foreigners, you guys love like those like a Gangnam Style and love the PPAP song, which is totally different from what the local market loves the most. I mean, those songs are still very super popular, but the love songs, the ballads, is still very important. So it's like a different perspective. Maybe because those songs are pretty catchy for people to learn. Yeah, and in Taiwan, actually, there's like a local group. The lyrics is something similar to brick on the head, something like that. Yeah, and it's going viral as well. Yes, their YouTube click were like amazed, but this lyrics probably is like doesn't really mean anything, or it's like talking about like a silly daily life, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you think, from your experience, is that very tied to the country where it's released? Like, does the humor transcend throughout the entire Asian market?
Well, I think that will have something to do maybe a language a little bit, because the one I was talking about, that one is the Taiwanese. Then if you don't speak the language, you probably don't understand. That's why the video is important. If you see the video, you probably will understand what the song is about. You don't have to understand the lyrics. Yeah.
Yeah. Because there's also, like, aside from language, there's also some barriers in humor. Some things that some people find funny, they don't find it that funny. Even like within Scandinavia, we can have that barrier. So I was just interested in your perspective about the story and how a good artist narrating a good story can change an A&R's head over signing him maybe.
Yeah, like Jessica said, there's PPAP, Gangnam Style, that sort of thing. I mean, it will always be universal. I think in terms of just if you do it right, and if the video and the story is right, I mean, it's global. But I think, in terms of humor, you're right. I mean, there are some sort of very, very minor, subtle bits that culturally that may need some communication. So, I think generally, I think that the story is still very important. I think that there are certainly occasionally some, I wouldn't say novel, but like the occasional big hit like Gangnam Style that will resonate with people. But I think, I think still that whole sort of the love story or relationships, things like that, I think that still applies.
Yeah. I would like to touch on the business side a bit more as well, as far as like how much room do you feel there is for writers in the Asian market, and what kind of day-to-day work does that require to write more than one song and to understand that market? If someone's interested in actively pursuing that market, what would it require as far as being a songwriter?
Well, I think if you're into like a songwriting for Asia market, first of it, you probably need to listen to some of them. Yeah, I assume like people who come to this, this event, you guys probably like listen to like Asia music a lot. I think that's very important to get to, like, you have to get to study the market a little bit. But Asia, so many countries. Probably you can focus on one or two countries, like for example, Korea. Then because it is all like the boy band, the girl group, then probably you know what's big for them, like the dance kind of stuff, the EDM stuff. But for J-pop, they have their own style. But like rock music is still pretty big over there in a way. And for like a C-pop, the Mandarin, the Chinese pop, like the slow love songs probably will be the best. But for my perspective, it's like most of my songwriters are really good at writing those love songs already. And then my clients, they probably want something like a dance kind of stuff. Then that's the time I will ask my colleague, like all over the world, like in Sweden, in Finland, or like in America, like, can you send me some dance tracks? Because most of my writers, they are not good at writing this stuff. Yeah, so it's pretty common like in Chinese market, I think in Korea market as well, most of the dance songs are actually written by like a Western songwriters, or at least it's like a co-write with local writers. Yeah.
I think she was referring to me. I think I just want to expand on that point. I think it's very important to look at like Chinese pop is completely different from a musical structure point of view. I think there are a couple of markets in Asia that have that very independent identity. So I think Korean pop, Japanese, and I think China as well. Whereas I think, and I've certainly traveled throughout Asia quite a bit, through my previous life as a corporate guy. I've heard a lot, like in Southeast Asia, for instance, there is still, because of the language and how it's being pronounced and things like that, excuse me, there seems to be, more tolerance, not tolerance, but there's a more appreciation for sort of more Western style, melodies. Whereas I think with China, you really need to spend a lot of time to listen to what's out there, what's the big top hits. You really need to do that similarly for Korea and Japan. So it's not something, as a songwriter, I mean, I've done this for 15 years. I mean, it's just not something that you could just say, oh, great beat, great vibe, good melody, ready to go. There's just, especially choruses, things like that, you got to really listen to what they have, and perhaps as a form of practice, maybe just replicate that sort of thing, and then from there you gradually sort of find your own way, your original sort of authentic ideas, and then adapt it accordingly. I think that will be that's the yellow brick road, I think, for everybody. I think.
Is there a good source to find all this music, like all the most interesting music from the Asian market?
Yeah, I think I don't know how these streaming platforms, apps, and so forth works. I think Spotify definitely has a very, very large library of things. But then, I think specifically for the Chinese market, there's an app called KKBox. It's very, very, I mean, it's still international, but I think it focuses a little bit more on the Mandarin, the Asian pop sort of idea. China, I doubt that we'll be able, even I living in Hong Kong, it's quite hard for us to access a lot of the China music unless you really, get into it. But, 10 cent, I guess.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think I will highlight on this one, the KKBox Adrian mentioned is only available in 7 countries in Asia for now. Yeah, but they are the biggest local player based in Taiwan, so they have the most Chinese pop music database for sure. And for the China one, mostly they are geo-locked. I'm sorry again. But I think for Apple Music or like a Spotify, you can definitely find some like a Chinese pop music for sure. Yeah, if you need to find out like a chart, that probably will be a little bit difficult. But I probably will look into it and send something to people who need it.
Or perhaps, perhaps that's something that your publishers might be able to help you with. I mean, and things like YouTube and just a quick Google search might get you somewhere.
Yeah. What's the top song in China now? Yeah. It probably will get you there, like the Apple song, things like that. I mean, make good use of the internet. I think you will be surprised what you can find. Really, yeah.
Can you tell us a bit more about the Apple song?
The Apple song?
What is it about?
The Apple song is about an apple. Do you know how to sing it?
No.
No, that's
don't
PPAP.
know.
You don't know?
I know the song. I can't sing it. Like it's. I think maybe after this we could show you that video. But it's PPAP stands for what? Pen, pineapple, apple, pen.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what that really means. You know, as a story.
I know that song now. I know that song.
Actually, I was just telling some of the songwriters, this guy, Japanese guy, he only has like this hit. And he actually came to Taiwan for a concert a couple of months ago. I was like, are you going to do the PPAP for like 90 minutes? I didn't go, but I was like, you know, like if one song goes viral and can bring you a lot of things.
This one.
Yeah, that's a PPAP song.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you get cancer from that.
Yeah, but it's like, I think even my German colleagues, she's telling me her kid loved the PPAP song, was playing at home all the time, and all the kids in kindergarten is playing the song, and she's like, oh, what is this? And that's how she finds out. Yeah. I think for like a new music, it's somehow a little bit easier for the younger generation to accept, to take it.
I think creatively, you know, no boundaries. If you think of something that's sort of like, oh, okay, there's some quirky aspect to it, do it. You know, I don't think there is any rhyme nor reason to doing music anymore. Like, you know, I think definitely, you know, as a recording artist, I think very much about, you know, my music direction and overall positioning in the market and so forth. But as a songwriter, I don't think there is any boundaries whatsoever, nor should it ever be, you know. Yeah.
I'm interested in the future of some of the genres in some of the Asian markets. What are some of the trends you maybe see in different genres, new things that are going to influence the music?
I am completely underqualified to make any crystal ball predictions. Yeah. I think I go back to my original point, and I think and this is, I think, universal, global, universal to everywhere. I think, you know, this whole concept of, you know, making music off your laptop in the park somewhere, you know, with a little keyboard that you could carry around anywhere. I think that allows us, you know, in many aspects to do all sorts of different things. You know, digital technology is, you know, sounds cheesy, but it's really changing everything that we do. And not just music, you know, like everything that we see and touch and feel. So certainly from a musical standpoint, it's very important to actually look at it. And I've come to that realization as well. As I go back to Hong Kong, it's gonna be a complete revamp in terms of how I'm gonna approach my music. But it's sort of like how sort of electronica can redefine all sorts of different genres. And then from a melodic standpoint, from a lyrical standpoint, you know, finding your way after listening to the local music and so forth. I think that's really important. The other thing that I would like to stress is, you know, when you write your demos, it's good to do a little bit more background research just in terms of how the tones are like with different languages. What I've found, you know, Jessica will attest to this. I've never been I've never been a songwriter with loads and loads and loads of songs. And partly the reason why is because I've always written in English. And so that has affected me from a melodic standpoint, you know, and unfortunately that really didn't work out so well. So the last couple of years I've started just, you know, you don't need to know how to speak Mandarin or Korean or Japanese and so forth, but it's very important for you to capture certain phonetics, you know, how it's articulated, how you know, a particular singer sings that particular tone, because that fundamentally affects, you know, how you develop that melody and how long or short a note is and so forth. So I think that if there's a piece of intellectual advice that I would claim to give you, that would be it, I think. I strongly recommend you guys to just really listen to those little bits and pieces and see how that affects your songwriting.
Yeah, and for my point of view, I think for the next, like, at least a year or two, the biggest genre should be EDM in Asia market. Yeah, I think it's just a trend. Like now, it's easy access to the Western music, and people love that genre, and it's coming big in Asia now. Yeah, and if you're good at writing this kind of stuff, I think you will have bigger opportunities, because the local writers, they will cover the love songs in a way. Yes.
I think it's important to touch on this because a lot of times when you're talking about things and you have kind of experts of things, then it's easy to get dragged into what's been done before, whereas things are constantly evolving and changing, and it's important to get your perspective on also the possible changes of the market. I would like to get everyone involved now, as we've had a talk for 45 minutes.
Wait, are we writing a song together?
I think so, the brick song.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So I laid the hook.
Yeah.
And you guys can go. So please, because this is a talk for the Finnish songwriting community, we would like to get your questions in as well, so we can get most out of this session.
Yes.
Yeah, Adrian already mentioned tone, so I'm sort of a linguist, so I know that Chinese has like 4 intonations.
Yes.
And so it's a large issue, but one is that how big, before now co-writing has started with foreigners, how big was doing cover versions of Western songs in Chinese, and how was it possible, because the Chinese language is so different, because Chinese language has a melody.
Yeah, I think especially with Hong Kong, I've seen it's less so now than before. I remember growing up in the 80s and 90s, and there was a huge Japanese invasion of music into Hong Kong, and so there was so much Japanese music that ended up to be, cover versions in Chinese. There's less so now. I'm not quite sure why. Perhaps I think historically, and I've heard this from a couple of producers as well, the pool of talent as songwriters, especially in Hong Kong, I'm not sure in Asia, but in Hong Kong at least, it was a lot less back then. So there was a huge demand for import music. But now that, I think a lot of us, who have, born and raised in Hong Kong, we went overseas to study. We've got some sort of experiences and observations with music, and we come back. So there's a lot more of these people coming back, and so that has helped. And so perhaps that's why there has been less. However, I see a lot of these kids who start up. They're covering English songs, but using a different arrangement style. To sort of distinguish themselves from other people. And I see a lot of how these little kids start. So I think generally speaking, that would be it, yeah.
And Jessica, to extend this, okay, China for us, it's huge.
Yes.
It's Cantonese, it's Mandarin, then it's Hong Kong, Taiwan.
Yes.
Are we supporting one China or two Chinas? Very complex issue, war is coming, okay. But money-wise, if you're just a songwriter and not performing artist, what does it mean, these different Chinas? They have different tastes, these different Cantonese and Mandarin are quite far from each other also.
Yeah.
And how is the copyright thing actually?
Okay, you're getting to the right point.
Yeah, so I mean, even though China is big, the copyright works in Taiwan, right?
Well, actually, China is a big country, and to be honest, like copyright thing doesn't really work there before. But in the past few years, like people have more knowledge now, and they are most corporates or record companies, they respect the publishing songwriters. So now, Warner Chappell has an office in Beijing. Actually, we work with a lot of digital platforms in China, and we can get a legit royalty statement. So it's getting better.
From digital only, but nothing
mechanical?
But from radio, television performances in China, is there any money coming to the songwriters? That's my question.
Okay. For that part, yes, there's a society in China. I think it's working slowly. We'll get there. Yes. It's improving. I would say that. But I cannot promise you can get everything in an year or something. But at least it's improving in a way. I think it will take time, because it's if you want to educate people who never has to pay anything to pay something, of course it will take time, but it's getting there. Yeah, because now with all the influence and people can reach out very easily. Like there's a lot of like TV shows go to China now, like The Voice and everything. So people like they respect this copyright in general. Yeah, so it's getting better. Yes.
I just remember 15 years ago participating in a seminar. We have a big Chinese delegation.
Yes.
And they were saying, and there was like, I don't remember the name, but they said he's one of the biggest Chinese artists. Actually, he was the only guy who spoke English from the delegation. And they said, yeah, in my albums, it's 1% is legal and 99 is pirate copies. But if it's Madonna, it's 100 because at that time there was no Warner yet in China. They didn't allow to foreign.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a little bit struggling as well for like foreign corporates to go inside China.
But my question now, if a big Chinese artist has a song from Finland, are you getting some money from the concerts here? Does any?
I mean, if the concerts is out, if it's outside of China, of course the local society will collect them. But in China now, actually the local society MCSC, they're also collecting royalties for concerts. Yeah, for us, for Warner Chapel, we will send, especially if our staff will go search, like if this concert has our songs, we will go to the society, said, okay, this is a list of Warner Chapel songs, please, we need to see the royalty statement, like stuff like that. So that's why I think it's also important to have if you're signed under a publisher, has a local office in China to help you to monitor those kind of things for you. I think that's very important for writers. Yes.
So did I get it right? There is no airplay or mechanical royalties collected and paid?
You mean at this moment?
Yes, in China.
Radio and television.
Yeah, all airplay.
Okay, the radio, probably not so yet. Yes.
Last year I was in advanced IP law course here, and there was lots of Chinese, and they told that there was 3 high courts, so can manage IPRs in some way. Okay. So there were no mechanicals, no airplay royalties.
Well, mechanical royalties for most of the major publishers in China now, we do take mechanical advance. So it's not like based on like afterwards. We normally do in Taiwan or in Hong Kong, and in China, like we do like a mechanical advance. Yes, for writers. Yes. Yeah. Anything else?
But being big in Taiwan, you get good money.
Sorry?
Having a big artist in Taiwan, local market, can be big also. I mean, Taiwan.
Yeah, because like we speak the same language, so like a lot of Taiwanese artists, we actually export them to China or elsewhere, whichever countries can speak Chinese. Like for example, we have a few singer-songwriters. They tour in Europe as well. They tour in London and in America and Australia. There are a lot of Chinese-speaking people. Yeah. So it's actually very good for the royalties from the concert tours.
Yeah, I think it's important to stress that the Chinese community, not just within Asia, but
it's
around the
over.
world.
Yeah.
That reach is potentially very, 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 very good. Yeah.
So you are very well positioned in Taiwan. Your office is bigger than the island. It reaches.
Yeah, for Taiwan, it's more like a hub of the Chinese music because we started very early. Yeah, so in China, like if you watch like those like The Voice China, those kind of show, the songs they chose to sing in the show, half the songs probably are from the 80s or 90s, written by Taiwanese songwriters. Yeah, because those are like a classic songs, and you are not. There's a lot of like a new album, new artists coming out every now and then. It's moving so fast. But speaking about like classic songs, it's still back to like the 90s or like early 2000. Yeah, and then those are the times Taiwan is already was the biggest hub at that time. So when we were watching the show, it was like, yeah, I know the song. Yes, yeah. So it's kind of unique in this way. And in Taiwan, that's how we have the advantage. Yes.
Yes. Is there any artists that actually sing in English? or use like English phrases or hooks? Or?
Oh, definitely hooks.
Yes.
There's a handful of artists based in various parts of Asia that do more English music, and there's certainly like more markets like Malaysia and Singapore where there's more people speaking English. I mean, that there is a bit more of that market. There's less so, I think, definitely with North Asia, but yeah, that there is. But in terms of hooks, I mean, definitely. But keep it simple. Like the idea should be very simple and just like that pineapple pen, apple pen, you know, things like that, right?
Yeah.
So I think definitely. I don't think as long as the story connects, you know, they're able to understand it, you know, and you keep that hook, you know, nice and simple. Definitely, definitely.
Especially, actually, there's a lot of like songs, the hook lines, like the chorus, the first 2 lines or something. It's in English, but it has to be something easy, like Adrian said. You cannot use like really something, like you cannot even spell them in a way for most people, and speaking of that, there's actually a lot of like artists now in Asia. They work with like Western, like producers like that. Like there's one Taiwanese, a big diva artist, Jolin Tai. She actually worked with Alesso, and she actually just singing English. Yeah, and there's another one from China. Her name is Jane Zhang, and she works with Timbaland for her album. And actually, the whole album is in English. So the Chinese people also want to reach out outside of China in a way. Yes.
Did we have a question here? No?
Sorry, I just wanted to one last point about that.
Yeah, sure.
The play on a certain English word might actually work for the local language, so you never know. So I think there is something, you know, the song that Alex wrote, you know, what pay?
Pay, yeah.
Pay, you know, like I think when I heard it was like something like play or something, or something like that, right? So there is that opportunity to play with those words, and then the marketing machine kicks in, and they talk about, you know, why you use that English word, and then, you know, how that translates to the local language. Yeah.
Yes, now that you have worked for a couple of days with Finnish songwriters, how do you find them, the strengths of Finnish songwriters? Are they good at making top lines, or good at tracking, or?
Yeah. I'll be honest, it's hard to tell because the intensity of the 3 days, and also just the quality of guys that I've been working with. I mean, they're fantastic. They're fantastic. And not only so, they have had a lot of experience working with artists in Japan, Korea, and so forth. So definitely so. I personally have found the trackers to be just completely out of this world. Good. Yeah, I'm already talking to some of these guys and hoping that we would be able to collaborate in the future. So yeah, my biggest takeaway is I've learned so much in terms of the programming side and the arrangement side. I'm not the most technical guy on Logic Pro and so forth, but you know, I've learned, you know, certain things, like you need to put something like here and like, you know, little bells, you know, just as a syncopated thing right at the end of the hook, for instance, right? So I've learned so much on arrangement.
More? No?
I could ask something, maybe could you tell a bit more, like for example, you mentioned this, but I just wanted to kind of emphasize that, for example, at A-Pop Castle, most of the songs are written in English. And then what happens, what is the process like when the translator comes in?
Interesting. Well, I think with, it really depends on the artist. For instance, you know, Mireille, who we worked with, I mean, it was such a integrated process that she was there right from the beginning, and she told us about her story, what she wanted to say. And so we would, you know, it was almost like we were working in tandem. So, you know, Eva and I, we were just working on the English, you know, phrases, words, and things like that. And then we would just talk about the idea, and then she would see, okay, I wonder if how that would actually translate into Japanese. So I think that it really depends on the artist, and I guess also I think the more that the artist is able to communicate, and let's face it, English is still pretty much the universal language right now. I think what I've experienced with her specifically is that we were only able to be so integrated with that from a collaborative standpoint because the language barrier wasn't so much there. So I think, I think sort of like that. Yeah.
What about when a song made in English is pitched to an Asian artist?
Yeah. Oh, yes. I think I'll answer to that. So for me, I'll get a lot of songs, even from like not just local writers, from overseas as well. When I pitch the songs and the client, if they confirm the songs, sometimes they would. I think for English songs, if like the lyrics somehow also touches them, they probably the Chinese lyrics will follow the English lyrics a little bit. Yeah, maybe they probably will even keep a few lines of the English words from the like, chorus or verse, whatever, but they will still keep the concept close to the original English lyrics. That happen a lot in our territories. Yes.
What I normally do is I love writing lyrics, but only in English because my Chinese is not that great. But I love writing lyrics in English. But then I would sing the demo track in whatever language that is, whether it be Cantonese, Mandarin, and so forth. But when I submit that demo, I would have English lyrics there. So that allows you to tell that story. So what you're presenting to your publisher and the record label and so forth is that you've got the melody that works particularly well in that language, but at the same time you've got that story as well. And so they will sort of look at that and go, okay, all right, maybe that works, so forth.
Yeah, and for the Chinese lyrics who's working on the English demos, yeah, like because of the language thing, so needs to count like how many words could fit into the English words. So it's slightly different, and because of the pronunciation. So sometimes it will sound a little bit different. Of course, it's not a different language. Yeah, so actually it's also a challenge for like lyrics to write those like a translation ones. Because if it's the demo is in Chinese, they will know like exactly how many words it should be. But if it's in English, like everybody will have a different ways to interpret in a way. Like this might fit in 2 words, but that person probably think it will be like 3 words. Then it will be different. So sometimes if I ask like a few lyrics to work on the same English demo, when I got the result back, the words in Chinese will be different. He probably will write like 3, and this one will write for 2. Yeah. So it's slightly different how you like sing it in a way.
Yeah, because I think a lot of languages in Asia are quite alphabetized. So, Japanese, Korean, Thai. Chinese is very, very unique in that sense because each word has one sound and it has one meaning. Whereas I think with Japanese, like other forms of Asian languages, there's a lot more freedom in playing with the alphabets and how that sounds with a melody. Whereas with Chinese, you got to really nail that, both the melody and the lyrics as well, because it's one phrase and then those notes have to be it. So a lot more freedom, I guess, with other forms apart from Chinese. Yeah.
And is there a standard share that a translator would take from the copyright?
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny because for like a Chinese music, as I mentioned, most people they work alone. So it's like a composer and lyrics. Normally it's 50-50 share. And even though there's like 3 people work on a melody, they would, divide into 3 for the 50. The lyrics still got the 50. That's the original how it works for our market. But if it's like a song, for example, from like Finland, then we'll talk to the lyrics. Some lyrics, if there's no share for them, they probably don't want to work on it, especially if it's like a really big, huge ones. Yeah, but no, it's difficult to give them like a 50% of share. So I think this can be negotiated. Yeah, before I think there's no share for them, but I think in the past few years, like most writers are more opening up to give like the Chinese lyrics some share. Yeah, I think it's for Korean market as well, and for Japan market as well. Like local lyrics will have some share. but this could be negotiated. Yes. Yeah.
We're good. Thank you, Adrian, Jessica.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for
having
joining.
us.
Thank you.